and it is all recording. So anything you say from now onwards about washing machines or flying apricots or anything like that will be recorded. Alice, you're getting used to my technique.
Yes.
Right, so, okay. Right. Drum roll. Tutankhamun. If I asked you all about Tutankhamun, you would be able to give me some facts. Whether we will be examining any of those facts today is another question, because Tutankhamun, King Tut, whatever you'd like to refer to him as, has got a very checkered history, from, you know, his early discovery to who he was in life, to his father Akhenaten, to being a pharaoh that only reigned 9 years. He was of the 18th dynasty. He was of the New Kingdom, and he reigned for approximately 8 to 9 years. He was born in the year 1342 BC, from what we can determine throughout the pharaonic chronologies that have been put together. And he became pharaoh in the year 1334 BC, and then died in 1325 BC. So the dates you really need to remember there is 1325. That's the date he died. And we've got lots of links with his father, Pharaoh Akhenaten, and we've got many links with other pharaohs there and after. But one thing I'd like to focus on today is the modern understanding of Tutankhamun, in the sense of how he's been preserved and the Valley of the Kings, and then we'll look at some wonderful images. So that's the direction. Tiny little bit more of a background. His successor was in fact his prime minister in life, called I or A, or however you'd like to refer to him as, an A and a Y. And he was married to his sister, his half-sister, an Ankh Hessen Namun. Being married to his half-sister, being that incest was the general way of things in the 18th dynasty, he had 2 offspring. Both of them died very early on. One died in pregnancy at 6 months, and one died a few hours after being born. So those tragedies through his reign, his 9-year reign, through somebody who was referred to as the living image of Aten, or the living image of Amun, all associated with the sense of the sun and the sun disk. And the way we're going to look at his life is by trying to understand what we're seeing from the images as well. Tutankhamun was physically disabled with a deformity of his left foot, along with bone necrosis. What bone necrosis is that the bone basically dies, but your skin and flesh is still there, and but your bone doesn't continue to form, and that gave him a deformity in his left leg, meaning that he had to use a cane. We know lots of other things from the tomb, from what was found in the tomb. We know that he loved his charioteering. He loved being an archer, but he also had a very tragic life. In essence, they had scoliosis, medium scoliosis. I've got mild scoliosis, and it doesn't affect my figure, but he had medium level scoliosis, meaning that he could get around and probably wasn't very noticeable. And he contracted several strains of malaria. Thousands of artifacts were found in the tomb of Tutankhamun. And I think the way we're going to do now is actually go directly onto the images proper and try to paint the scene. And I know 1 or 2 of you are not happy with not being able to speak through the lecture, but with this technology that we've got now, it's very difficult to communicate what I want to communicate with other voices coming at me and other background noise. So What I'd like to do is I would like to know what you are seeing on your screen, Del.
Waiting for something to come up. Right, we've now got a picture of the desert. Valley of the Kings, possibly?
What else can you see on the right hand side? Can you see?
Nothing.
You can't see anybody else.
Oh, I've switched everybody off. Hang on.
No, that's fine. I just need to know what you're seeing on the screen.
Yeah, just a picture of what I would say is the Valley of the Kings.
And what are you seeing, Alice?
Picture of the Valley of the Kings, yeah.
And you don't need to see anything else. That's what I need to know. Ah, and interestingly enough, there's nothing written on here to say that this is the Valley of the Kings. That is really good. I'm impressed. You could this could actually be anywhere, but it's that hillock there, that escarpment is hiding in the Valley of the Kings. In fact, the Valley of the Kings is not just one valley. It's one sort of it's a few little valleys coming into sort of one center, and that hillock in front of us is actually creating a shadow, and you can see these little black holes. And these represent some of the tombs that have been found in the Valley of the Kings. The Valley of the Kings, so far, archaeologists have found, and we're not going to refer to them as Egyptologists because they're archaeologists. Archaeologists have so far found 65 tombs in the Valley of the Kings. And there's probably maybe 100 more hidden under lots of material that's been built up in the valley over many millennia. We don't just examine only Tutankhamun's tomb today. We get some parallels looking at other tombs. You could say that a scene like this is beautiful. You could say a scene like this is barren. You could see that this is a Garden of Eden. But this itself is the burial landscape, the burial valleys of the leaders of Egypt, very important people within Egyptian history. So we're looking at a period of about within this sort of new kingdom, and we're talking about over 3,300 years ago, and it's a landscape that's very different from the landscape where you see the pyramids. Pyramids represent leaders that wish to be shown to the world that they are and the embodiment of the stars. You know, the three main pyramids on the Giza Plateau were built and dedicated to the pharaohs in their lifetimes. They weren't built in retrospect, right? So what you'd do, you'd see there are nearly 100 pyramids in Egypt, maybe more. And as a pharaoh of Egypt, you would think, right, you know, I'm building this in my lifetime because that's where I'm going to go, because the afterlife is far better than this life. So you get these things built. The Valley of the Kings is rather different. It's more of a hidden landscape. And even with the bodies being hidden, they had a habit of being found. And Tutankhamun's tomb is no such exception. His body was eventually found in 1922. Not so much obsessed with the exact references and reports to the discovery of the tomb. You can get that from anywhere. You know, you can sort of, you can work out the backstory, but I want to give my story. The paintings within the tomb of Tutankhamun, these are the only ones. And when we talk about the tomb of Tutankhamun, there's this room, there's the treasury, there's the antechamber and the annex, and another room that they haven't so far investigated, which was found very, very recently. But that is another story. As you go there today, what you can see is the golden sarcophagus of Tutankhamun, one of 3 sarcophagi within each other at the burial chamber within the vaults of this wonderful tomb complex. And the painting there is more or less not fully in reference to this wonderful pharaoh. It's all that was they were able to produce at that time. And what I'm talking about, this tomb was never ever for Tutankhamun. If it had been a tomb for a pharaoh, it would be 10 times the size, or 100 times the size when you compare it with the tomb of Seti I. This nobody expected Tutankhamun to die when he did, and his prime minister basically said, right, you know, the pharaoh's now dead, long live me, but I'll give up my tomb for him. So again, more of the backstory. And thinking about Tutankhamun's tomb, thinking about the date 1922, and not 1923. When we talk about the whole story, it's a story of positives and negatives in the sense of archaeology. Many people believe that, you know, the tomb of Tutankhamun was discovered in late 1922, and there's that wonderful story of them drilling a little hole through the sealed doors, and then Lord Carnarvon would say to Howard Carter, "What can you see?" And Howard Carter would say, "Wonderful things," as a candle would flicker. But there's a problem with that very description. There are others of us that believe that Howard Carter had already entered the tomb a few years earlier, and he didn't go via the door. There's evidence of a little robber's tunnel going into the tomb, which Howard Carter said was evidence of somebody else breaking into the tomb in antiquity. And it's likely that the tomb had been discovered before 1922, because on being told by Lord Carnarvon that the license for Howard Carter to work in the Valley of the Kings would not be restored, you know, Lord Carnarvon was withdrawing his money from Howard Carter's work. Suddenly, Howard Carter said, "Oh, actually, I found a really important tomb." And it turned out to be one of the most important tombs in Egyptian history, and in worldwide history. It's quite strange that after being told you're going to lose your job, he suddenly finds something that he's been searching for nearly 2 decades. It's a trick that most of us archaeologists have. When our career isn't going too well, we find something that we've been sat on for a while, and I am no such exception to that rule. If you guys stay with me for a few years, you'll suddenly see me finding things that I'd already discovered years ago. But that's the secret of the archaeologist. But many of the questions that you might have tonight, I'm not going to answer, because it's such a big subject, Tutankhamun's tomb. So if you want to look at individual objects, sort of, there's about 10,000 individual objects of different sizes, and you know, from a small scarab beetle to a chair, to a shrine, to all these different things. It's endless. And going back to the Valley of the Kings as well, you're looking at one of many images that you could see of the Valley of the Kings, and you could see a tomb there. But they've found 65 tombs, and only around 20 of them have been properly recorded. And that's the tragedy of archaeology in Egypt. So much of the archaeology has been dug up, and the artifacts gone into a museum, and nobody has the foggiest what these things mean in relation to where they were found. Because simply, in lots of occasions in archaeology, people are so wanting to find things that they don't actually publish their reports in their lifetime, or not at all. And so there's still 45 tombs that they've opened to properly record. So the way the valley's shaped is not just due to the influence of human beings, but this frost is being shaped via frost. Yeah, it does get very cold there. Rain, thunderstorms. When there's a thunderstorm in Egypt, you know it, suddenly there's water gushing through this valley, and in it bringing all the muck and shale and the stone of the surrounding landscape, covering tombs. So under that one big pile of many piles within the Valley of the Kings, there's other tombs waiting to be found. And as an archaeologist, they are never to be found, personally thinking, because we've got enough work in the Valley of the Kings to keep going for the next 100 years. We don't need to find anything else. And the epitome of everything I've said will come up not in the next slide, but the slide after. I've done this lecture 4 times this week. And I've always thought, why have I chucked this slide in here? What sense is it? What does it mean? This is actually sort of a little line drawing of where lots of the artifacts were in relation to the antechamber. So on the right there was the blocked up entranceway to where the sarcophagus of Tutankhamun is to be found. And the little one over on the left there is leading to another little annex. And you're not seeing much here other than, I hope this isn't the lecture today, you're thinking, but all of this clutter here is what it is clutter. It's complete clutter. The whole story to do with Tutankhamun's is clutter. Is looking like an old curiosity shop. And you'll know what I mean in a short while. When we think about conservation and preservation and politics with the Valley of the Kings, it's just that. In the 1980s, you could go to the Valley of the Kings and there was a restaurant there, right? Fresh water there, you could wash your hands, you could have a meal, you could have a cup of tea, lovely, brilliant. But the one thing that they forgot to do was plumbing. So what was happening, all the gunk and all the cess was going into the ground and was then making its way into the shale. And when it was making its way into the shale would absorb the cess, the human fecal matter and the urine and all the different liquids and the waste tea and you name it, it's all into the rock, okay, into the shale. And how do we know that? Because in the 1990s, the archaeologist John Romer was working on doing a TV series called The Rape of Tutankhamun. And one of the things he was instrumental in doing was to close the restaurant, because he took officials and he said to the officials, "Are you looking at this painting in this tomb?" And the officials said, "Yeah, it's a bit of a bad shape, isn't it? It's coming off the wall." And the officials would be going, "Well, you know, that's just age, isn't it?" And John Romer would be saying, "No, actually, those cracks are new. I was here a decade ago. Those cracks are new. Why is that happening?" And it turned out it was just to do with the groundwater cess. What it was doing, it was expanding, moving the rock. This would have a displacement effect in the tombs, and the tombs were cracking up. Even in the tomb of Tutankhamun, a crack appeared in the ceiling. A crack in the ceiling, amazingly enough. And for the first time in over 3,000 years, water, after a great storm, seeped into the tomb of the great pharaoh himself. We're calling him the great pharaoh. He's the only pharaoh that we can call great, because none of the tombs in the Valley of the Kings, we have found such treasures. Obviously, Tutankhamun in life was not a great pharaoh. He was just a lesser pharaoh, an insignificant pharaoh that really didn't have much say in his own ruling in the kingdom. And after a while, he died, as we know. Was he murdered? Look that one up, folks. I'm not really interested in that. We want to do archaeology. So the damage being created by the archaeologists to the Valley of the Kings is more than the damage being caused by the tourists, because each tomb they would open, the bacteria would get in there and start eat away at the wonderful paintings and stuff. Even the only room with paintings in the tomb of Tutankhamun shows extensive deterioration. There was an archaeological excavation mission from the United States working in the Valley of the Kings in the 90s, and the archaeologist excavating a tomb said, re-excavating a tomb, I may add, they said, "Oh, this really smells in you. It smells like cess." And the official said, "Well, That's because it probably is. And the American archaeologists said, oh, we'll just take it all out. And as they took it out rapidly, everything in the tomb rapidly dried out and started cracking and coming off the walls. This is how delicate the archaeology is in the Valley of the Kings. It's not given the respect where it deserves. So all you can basically see today when you go into the tomb is this. Just the outer shrine of Tutankhamun and the golden sarcophagus and the paintings on the wall, which is quite sad, really. There's no painted ceiling in any of these rooms, and none of the other rooms have got any paintings in them either. And you're looking at the golden face of Tutankhamun. They clean it up. They clean this up on a regular basis now, but the problem is, visitors still see the tomb of Tutankhamun, and maybe the thing that they should do is just stop people seeing it and build a replica somewhere else. And this is the thing: none of you and I don't have a right to say that this material should be displayed forever. These people were buried to be left in posterity. They were to be left there forever. They were left there to rest. And this is what you've got to respect when you see these types of monuments. I haven't asked the question who's actually been to see this site, but we'll come on to that in the break. So here we go. It's a tiny room that you've already seen, and we'll go into that little bit of a detail. We've got the golden sarcophagus, we've got the outer sarcophagus, we've got another sarcophagus. Call this a chest or an outer shrine. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shrines above this as well. So this was all crammed into a tiny space. What we're probably seeing when we look at the tomb of Tutankhamun is actually, we've prepared all this stuff, but we can't fit it all in there. This tomb is not big enough for this pharaoh. So they just gave up at one point and just chucked everything in there. It was that type of affair. And this archaeologist, John Roman, what he's trying to say is that, so much money is generated every year associated with Tutankhamun's tomb. Hundreds of millions of pounds, and very little of it actually goes back into the Valley of the Kings to sort of preserve the tombs and have them there for people to see them for a very, very long time. And what you're seeing is something interesting. This is one of the 4 painted walls inside the actual burial room of Tutankhamun himself. And what you can see is the gold leaf is being affected by decay, bacteria. And that's likely to have occurred maybe just before 1922. Probably at the time that the tomb was originally opened or viewed by Howard Carter. And then the bacteria starts to decay the walls. Or maybe I'm wrong. What I am right about is that the paintings themselves have decayed quite excessively over the past 100 years. Oh, we just got black and white images today, have we? Doesn't show a lot, does it? Just a black and white image that you'd see in a normal textbook. Let's just stop the lecture now and not show you any color images, and let's not illustrate it properly. But we are going to look at 20 color images taken in the 1920s inside the tomb. Lots of the images that are published in regards to Tutankhamun's tomb are usually black and white, and they really don't show much because they just show a load of black and white boxes. And is this actually gold or is this black? And well, what is this chest? Is this ivory, ebony box? What does it actually look like? But we do actually have color, so that's what we're going to go to. And one thing the archaeologist John Romer is actually saying is that this is just not about this is not about a golden coffin. This is not just about golden relics. This is not just about a load of treasure. This is about somebody's life. This person lived and breathed. This person had a backstory. All of these artifacts have relevance. And he's also saying that when an archaeologist would enter the tomb of Tutankhamun, they would weep because they had never seen anything like it. You know, with the objects in there, they had never seen anything like it. This was a dream. And for Howard Carter, it was, mind my French, a bloody nightmare, because of all the thousands of objects there that needed to be provenanced, needed to work out what it was made of, where it was from, what this meant, in what part of life Tutankhamun used this. Was it a gift? Was it this? And all the rest of it. Can you imagine having to do that year after year? And Howard Carter waited to look at the very face of Tutankhamun. He waited to lift up that golden coffin sarcophagus lid. He waited more than a year. He was cataloguing the artifacts. And by the time he had got to looking into the face of Tutankhamun, I think he was starting to regret finding it. Tutankhamun, the cult associated with Tutankhamun, was bigger than the pharaoh had ever been. There was something in the 1920s called Tutism. People would have King Tut parties, and people would dress like King Tut, and they would want to get artifacts from Egypt, and they would want to visit the tomb, and they would want to reconstruct the tomb here, there, and everywhere. Everyone wanted a bit. But nobody ever felt for this archaeologist, Howard Carter, who was never recognized for the find. He's almost as if he's been erased from history. He treated the burial of he treated the burial of Tutankhamun with so much respect. He was never given a knighthood. He was never given an MBE and an OBE or anything like that. The only people to actually recognize him were actually the Americans. They gave him an honorary doctorate, and the Egyptian government, King Faisal, actually gave him the Order of the Egyptian State, 3rd class. So, and Howard Carter felt really resentful. He ended life as an antique dealer in 1939. So, if we can, sorry about that, phone just rang. I just turned it off. So, I also want to sort of, I also want us to move away from Tutankhamun just for a little moment, just for a tiny moment. I've kept saying that the tomb of Tutankhamun is small, and it's it's a really small space, and it's not really the place where a king should have been buried, and it's a forgotten king, and they rammed and crammed all this stuff in there. And what does all this mean? What does all this actually mean? Well, this is the entranceway into Seti I's tomb, a proper entranceway and a proper tomb. You could fit the antechamber, the burial chamber, the treasury, the annex into this one room in Seti I's tomb several times. You don't see this level of hieroglyphs on the walls in Tutankhamun's tomb. You don't see the beautiful celestial ceiling as we find in the tomb of Seti I, otherwise known as Sethos I. And all this sort of has a meaning to the Egyptian mindset, the gentle but sometimes harsh Egyptian mindset. That idea that one day the afterlife is far better than the life you lead. So if you have a hard life on this planet, you are destined for better things. But we're looking at this painting just a little bit. It's not the most brilliant of images. It really isn't. But it's quite a sad image now. And why is it a sad image now? Because look at that bit of ceiling there. It's beautiful, isn't it? That's what it looked like in about 1980. That's what it looked like in 1990. All thanks to the archaeologists, those greedy archaeologists. One of the things I really reiterate when I do my ghost story evenings is that if you're offered something, say somebody's got a bag of golden coins, it's a story repeated time and memorial. It's a warning, mind. So you have a bag of these coins, and somebody says, take some of them, but don't take too many. Archaeologists always take them all. They never rest. We're greedy people. We want to keep finding things. We're never happy with our lot. You know, I've had many relationships, and it's just like thinking, every woman I've ever met, she said, you're never happy. You're never happy with just finding one thing and just researching it. You always want to find more. And that's like all archaeologists I've ever known. We're all the same. But the greediness at Seti, the first tomb, was that in the 1990s, an American archaeologist decided that he wanted to excavate underneath this wonderful room as part of the Seti, the first complex of rooms, his burial rooms. And as he was excavating underneath, he found a filled-in vault. And a few months later, the vault caused subsidence for the ceiling to collapse inwards. And the archaeologist said, well, I'm doing it for science. We always do it to progress our career. We always do it because we want the next bite of the cherry. This is why it's so much better for me to be teaching, because it takes my mind off finding things. The Valley of the Kings, 65 ancient tombs and still counting. 2008, a new one was found, right? And this sort of new kingdom necropolis, and a landscape of memories, gentle memories, which blow on the wind. And what I mean gentle memories is the true spirit of these tombs have gone. It's just a valley with open tombs, with mainly nothing in them. All the glories have been taken away to Cairo or Western museums. And again, subsidence causes cracks in these tombs. In Tutankhamun's tomb, it was never completed. And in 1990, a crack appeared, and then they had a bit of a storm, and there was 3 inches of water in the tomb of Tutankhamun. For the first time in history, water. 3 inches of water in the tomb. That's how good we are as archaeologists in caring for this landscape. Up until that point, there was a vacuum. The vacuum itself kept the walls intact. The vacuum starts to sort of crumble within a tomb like this, and the bacteria and air seeps in, and the oxygen. It has its own wicked way with the archaeology. Oh, and now we have the archaeology. We have the gentle, tender archaeology. We slip into a bit of a dream world. We're now sleeping. We're now dreaming. This is something that Howard Carter had searched for his entire life. An intact burial chamber. Not just a burial chamber, a burial chamber with all the riches of ancient Egypt. Well, moreover, all the riches of a single man. Do you know what you can say? Is that the burial chamber of Tutankhamun and everything buried with him is like a diary. You know, I've got my own diary, and my diary is always alongside me. And in that diary, it tells me about what I've done from day to day. And unfortunately, I've seen that somebody's lost the connection. So we're gonna miss my flow a minute, and we're gonna add them back in. So Alice has lost us. Right, Alice, we're back with the flow. I don't know how much of that you missed, Alice.
Not a lot. The internet just went down. My son had to reconnect. It's okay.
Your Arton had to reconnect. That's good. so Tutankhamun's burial mask. When Howard Carter's looking on this burial mask in November 1925, it's 3 years after he discovered and opened up the antechamber. 3 whole years of thinking, what is in that sarcophagi? What is in that shrine? Can you imagine what that would do to your mind? It would drive you crazy. Have we actually got the Boy King completely preserved? Will there be any organic residue? Will there be any wreaths of flowers? He was right, you know, because actually there are wreaths of flowers around him. Look at all this decaying matter. This is what this black bacterial type stuff is. You know, this individual is the epitome of ancient Egypt. This is everything that ancient Egypt should be. But this is a minor pharaoh. This is somebody so small in the history. This is not one of the great Ramesses. But this is a diary. This is, you know, when people talk about ancient Egypt, they argue, they say, well, you know, it's all about the pharaohs, isn't it? Nobody ever hears about the little man. Nobody ever hears about the little woman in the village who's making baskets. We do now because we found some of those villages, actually. But this isn't just a pharaoh. This is about something that we can feel, somebody that we can feel very sorry for, because he had a very harsh life, like some of his subjects. He was not the normal pharaoh that lived and subjugated his people to a harsh rule or a rule of enlightenment. Didn't have the chance, my friends. And I really pretty love these images because they're all color. You know, every lecture that I've done about Tutankhamun in the past, you know, I've used black and white images, and it's like people saying, well, this is this. Yeah, that's nice. But you can see a real sort of some of the colors. You can see some humanity. And this is January the 4th, 1924. Just remind ourselves on dates. November 1925. So in other words, after he had entered the chamber in 1922, before they actually started moving the shrines, there was a long period to go before they're actually sort of peering past those 5 shrines to actually see the innermost shrine and getting their first look at one of the outer sarcophagi of Tutankhamun, January the 4th, 1924. And one note of caution is the names of the people on this screen. Howard Carter, there he is, looking in. You can imagine that he's there his colleague, Arthur Callender, he's saying to Arthur Callender, you're going to ask me the question? And Arthur Callender says, all right then, what can you see? And maybe Howard Carter's saying wonderful things. He's actually saying, I'm finally looking, I'm so close. I'm within inches of touching this man's wrappings. Not to sound sordid, I don't mean that at all. Of actually getting a sense of this person, actually looking into the eyes of a pharaoh who nobody else has seen for over 3,300 years. That moment, that connectedness, the last people to see Tutankhamun were the people who embalmed him. This is how relevant this history is. This is the innermost of dreams. You know, you could think of Coleridge, Kubla Khan. You could think about smoking opium and thinking, you know, this is all a dream. And in lots of ways, this was a dream for Howard Carter. I think he kept on pinching himself every day. Is this real? Or is this actually a nightmare? What is this? because the politics around the discovery of this tomb were horrendous. And what I mean by horrendous, because Howard Carter was constantly being challenged by the Egyptian authorities. They kept on saying, I know you found it, Howard, right? But it's all of this belongs to the Egyptian state. And he would argue, with officials. He would say, well, under Egyptian law, if a body's been found in a tomb and the tomb's never been opened, then therefore everything reverts back to the Egyptian state. And I'm to be given no compensation. But because the tomb had been opened and had been robbed previous, therefore I deserve recognition, and I deserve to be working in this tomb. So you can probably work out why he claims somebody had been in the tomb before him, and not himself. Can you see the story? If he's saying that somebody else had tried to rob it before, he could continue to be in on the action. So there was this tussle, and eventually King Faisal basically said, look here, we'll recognize his talents, let him work within this landscape. He had a little house built actually nearby. And years later, the house was abandoned, obviously, by Howard Carter because he no longer lived there. And he left some glass slides within his old home. And years later, archaeologists excavated his home to find some of the glass slides. You know, those old sort of Victorian type glass slides, and this is not the Victorian period. You know, give you another idea, another taste. What yesterday's archaeology is today's archaeology. And the archaeology of today is the future archaeology. All these sort of prose and understanding, all these sort of dreams that we take as archaeologists. And you're looking in colour. Do you know what? That first moment, the Lord Carnarvon's crouched down alongside Tutankhamun as they've drilled a hole through that second sealed door. And Howard Carter's looking in there. And he can see wonderful things. And why could he see wonderful things? Because he had already been in the tomb a few years before. Nobody had known. Because the stories have it that as the hole is drilled through the sealed door, there's a bit of a vacuum, and the candles flicker. And when you think about it, the only way you're going to be able to see inside is if the candle's beyond the door, to be able to see what's in there. And this is why I'm a little bit suspicious of the story of the finding of the tomb. But you know what? That's my theory, isn't it, folks? Let's look at what we've got. What we do find is those little sort of lozenge-shaped tablet things in front of us. Those are actually mummified cats, mummified ibis birds, and his two children, mummified with him. And what you can see is actually his diary, all of it. Each of those items in there tells you a story about Tutankhamun, all the way back to when he was a child. A chair in there, a cane at an early stage of his life, a gift from his mum, a gift from his dad. In other words, it's likely that practically everything that he was given or used in life is buried there with him. And this is why I'm saying it's a diary. It's one picture of one individual person's life. We find 3 couches, and that's marked as a celestial cow. That couch is a celestial cow in this wonderful antechamber. Image taken in December 1922. A wooden chair. And that's interesting on the right. Do you know what's in there? His gowns. That's where his clothes are. You know, that it's He lived with this. He was buried with it. And he takes these objects into the afterlife with him. For Tutankhamun's afterlife had to be better than his life. Had to be. And you know that black and white image we saw earlier on? It didn't show this, did it? It didn't show color. It didn't show the ivory and mahogany chests. It didn't show the ivory and mahogany chair. It didn't really show these two wooden boxes here either. And one of them, you could see a little bit of a statue looking out, peering out of this closed box. Can you see me? It's saying. And on the walls inside this tomb, these have been whitewashed, lime washed. And just you can see a staining there. Beyond there is the burial chamber, the chamber itself that contains the body of Tutankhamun. And there's no paintings in here. This is it. It looks like an antique dealer's. Gilded lion bed, clothes chest, various objects in the antechamber. December 1922. And you know those guards there, those sentinels, they look upon Howard Carter and they're guarding Tutankhamun himself. Maybe the real curse is a tragedy. Howard Carter never completed his written report about this tomb. Can you imagine what that would have been like? Just think about it for a moment. One of the greatest dictionaries of mankind ever created. Everything about the ancient Egyptian world in one publication, found by one man. He was never able to get his work finished. Everyone else has taken the glory. You guys have taken the glory, by the way, by looking at these images, looking at his work, looking at his completed work in the form of an exhibition in London. This is the tragedy of everything. You can see some reed baskets. What's happening with the reed baskets is that as the reed baskets are slightly drying, it's almost as if they've split and expanded and ruptured. We have some quite simple things there, some pottery objects, and some more organic remnants of leaves and flowers associated with this wonderful lost world. Looking at this now, this is what I'd like to do is sort of chuck a couple of slides forwards and come back to this. The reason why we're going to go a couple of slides forward is we'll go in there. Do you know one of the greatest things in life is to be able to see. And one of the greatest things in life is to be able to look at reconstructed drawings. I don't jest with you there. A good reconstructed drawing of a tomb complex like Tutankhamun's is a true gift. And the reason why it's a true gift, you look at something like this in a publication like the National Geographic, and you're looking and you're thinking, wow, that's how it once looked. All you've got now is a box with a gold coffin in. That's all you've got now. The rest of it is in the Cairo Museum, a little bit in the old home of Lord Carnarvon. A few other pieces here and there. Everyone wanted a bit of this wonderful pharaoh, actually. So this treasury room here, alongside the burial chamber. Maybe you should do a little plan of this, guys. Just get a bit of paper, draw a rectangular box, and then leading off it, you've got an annex. And then off the rectangular box, you've got an entranceway into the burial chamber. And off that again, you've got another room known as the Treasury. Did you know there's a missing room there? A few years ago, they were doing some scans, and they do believe there's another room, a hidden room, associated with Nefertiti. One of the Nefertitis. There were a number of Nefertitis in history. His mother Nefertiti, maybe. And you know what the best thing to do to happen to that room? Just leave it. Why do we always need to take everything? Why do we always have to be so greedy? Looking at this again here. This is in the Treasury. In the unpainted walls of the Treasury. This room had only been open a couple of years, and look at the bacteria on the walls inside the Treasury. Decay is already starting to set in. Wooden boxes, and look at that leopard-like creature poking his head out the box. Do you know, it's great to see something like this, you know. When I say reconstructed miniature boats, children's toys. He's buried with his children's toys. They're there in front of us. And if you've got any doubts to what an ancient Egyptian boat looked like on the River Nile, there's an image of it there. You've obviously got some other bits and pieces on the ground. Lots of material in the tomb, which we'll go on to. So again, the picture's starting to be painted, but not on the walls. You know, one of the other things is to look at images. You know, the background. So obviously, the first image we looked at was this ridge, and we looked into the Valley of the Kings. Right, there's another little valley going off here, little miniature valleys as well into the main valley. Yeah, and what we have here is that's Tutankhamun. And if we sort of go over here, we have Seti the First. And we go back over here, we have the tomb of Seti the Second. The reason why Seti the Second and Seti the First are important is because we've mentioned them. We'll mention Seti the Second. So off another valley, Seti the Second's tomb was actually used as a building that they could sort of put some of the artifacts in from the tomb of Tutankhamun to actually work on them. And there's something in what I've said, which I'll come on to. And for those that don't know where the Valley of the Kings is, there it is, alongside the River Nile. All the way down from Cairo. And again, back to this. So, again, in your mind's eye, you've got a chariot there, you've got the wheels, very important. And we do look at actually one sort of chariot frame as well. Now, you'd think that I should have done this in a different order, giving you some more facts at the beginning, but that's not always the way to do a lecture, to be honest with you. Chuck a few facts as you go in, important facts. So this is what we see. So the garlands are gone. The garlands are gone, you know, all that sort of stuff, that gunk which was found associated with Tutankhamun, all that sort of disappeared. This came to Britain in the 1970s, but it hasn't come to Britain in the new exhibition in the British Museum. So what we have, New Kingdom, 18th dynasty. Didn't I say Akhenaten was actually Tutankhamun's father, and he reigned before King Tut? Well, actually, when Akhenaten died, there was a bit of a power struggle to change things back to the way they had been. Akhenaten was saw himself as as God's representative, a bit like Jesus Christ in a way. And there was a bit of a power struggle, but then the proper leader of the country was to be Tutankhamun. So we know about we know he had two stillborn daughters, and they are given numbers, number 317A and number 317B. And those numbers obviously relate to them being actually found in the tomb itself. And for those that want to look more about Tutankhamun's tomb, type into the computer, not Tutankhamun tomb, but KV62 Valley of the Kings, and you might get a little bit more information. But do it after the lecture, please. So this actually means some more now. What we've got these miniature wrapped. So we've got cats and dogs here. So we've got these mummified remains here. We've got the chest. We've got these couches, and we've got all the higgledy-piggledy nature. So this is where we're actually going. And what I'd like to do is go back to this after the break. Are there any questions? Let's turn that off. Questions? Oh, let's put your mics on. My Anne's going to be confusing, upset that right, okay. Unmute. Hang on, shh. All in turn, my dear, all in turn. Right, Alice, anything you want to say?
Oh, I just thought that was just so wonderful. I was really interested in that just now.
Thank you very much. And more
I actually went down to the O2 Centre and seen the exhibition.
Yes, it is wonderful, isn't it? And actually seeing what you're seeing in a little bit more context as it was. That's what we've been doing. Anne in Bridgend, go on, you speak.
No, I was only going to say that the exhibition at the moment in London is going to be the last time that we see any of Tutankhamun, or any exhibition like that, because they're all going to go to Cairo.
Can I just stop you a minute, Anne? Alice just said the O2. That's what you're talking about, Anne, right?
No, this was years ago. I went down.
No, there's one in the British Museum.
Ah, right. Yeah, there's been twice then. So the one in the O2, right? This is where I've made the mistake. So I thought you were talking about the one in the British Museum. Sorry, Alice. So
no.
So the one in the British Museum now that Anne's referring to, right? Okay, fair enough. I was going to say
they were just saying that this is the last time that we're going to ever be able to see it in London. In London. I mean, I don't know how they can say that. But because people always, travel, don't they, with their exhibitions? But I just saw it. It said this is going to be the last time, and of course it's closed, so nobody's going to be seeing it. Whether they're going to keep it open afterwards, I don't know.
Well, they can't send the stuff back now to Egypt anyway because we got no. So we're staying there for now. To be honest with you. To be honest with you, obviously I've known more about what's going on for a while, but it looks like that exhibition will probably be going back when they're able to. I don't think anyone else is going to be able to see that. So right, what I would like is Del, anything, Henry?
Oh, that was really good. It's quite moving actually to hear the more human side of things, and that he's not just sort of a dry mummy, and he was a person.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. He was a person, exactly. Buddy, Henry, Pat, anything?
I went to the exhibition in London in the 40s, 50s with my children, and I've also been in the Valley of the Kings and been in one or two of the. But I think you gave it a difference. It's wonderful to see all those things without really understanding them, and I think you gave a background to it that made them more real in a way. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. It's got to be real. We've got to do reality. The most boring thing in the world is to go to an exhibition and not understand it. I went to and I'm not saying anything negative about Alice's and Anne's and your experience, Anne, of what you've seen about Tutankhamun. I'm talking about other exhibitions. I went to see the Hadrian exhibition in the British Museum in around 2007, right? And basically what it was, there was a statue of Hadrian, there was another statue of Hadrian, there was another statue of Hadrian, there was a load of things here, there was a load of things here. And at the end of it, I just thought, my friend who was with me, she said, I've been Hadrianed out. So if Pat and Henry haven't got anything to say, then we will go on to our little break. And there is something that I need to track down. Can I just mention the other thing? What I've mentioned is if anyone is interested in what we're doing on Saturday with the ghost thing, and I think the history and archaeology of Wales, that's I know you can't join that, Alice, but you know, if anyone wants to have a chat about that, they can. You know, when we finish today. So I'm going to go and get a drink, and I will see you soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okie doke.
Here comes the sun. Okay. Okay. What I'd like to do is maybe go to there. Okay. Go to there. Oh, I can do it. Okay, I can do it. Can do it. Okay, maybe. Okay. I'll go put the cat on. I think I need to.
Are your money's been shut in?
Yeah.
How are you coping with your?
Oh, they're sending. I'm getting deliveries from. I'm getting deliveries from Asda. So
I get them from Sainsbury's, but they're sending me substitutes, food I've never eaten before.
oh right, yeah.
Now I'm having to look up recipes, what to do with it.
Well, we've had well, we do eat Devon chips, you see. So I ordered Devon chips, and they sent me French fries. So of course they're little tiny things, you know, and so I had to cook the whole lot, you know.
I managed to get fish and chips delivered from our local chip shop. They, rang them up and they'd
yeah, I mean they
enjoyed that.
we have got a local spa, and we've got a local, the co-op is the closest. But it's mainly, I mean, I've been getting my milk as well, you know, 1 delivery a week. I've been getting, like, I bought 6 pints of milk last week. There's only 2 of us. No, 12 pints of milk. There's only 2 of us, and so there's quite a lot left, you know.
I should think so, yes.
It's
Well,
just
I put the big boxes and froze them till I needed them. So, and now milk will freeze well, and it's fine.
yeah. But
Oh,
it's a bit because they've hardly got anything that, you know. There are a lot that they haven't got, you know, like they want you to buy the most expensive, you know, like they don't have their own brands. They always offer you, like, you know, beans. Baked beans. It's like
I'm
pints
sure if it's more than the one you actually, if the substitute is more, they'll give you a voucher.
See, this is what he does. He doesn't like us talking. He always like. It's like when my daughter was a baby.
And we do better singing, perhaps. I'm in a choir, and they're trying at their normal choir meeting time. The choir master is giving us something to sing. We've all got the recorded music, so we can't hear each other. But the idea is we think of each other while we're singing. So we do that on Fridays. All the things you're having to do because you can't go out. But at least people are trying to keep things going and doing it together. I really value this that Carl's doing to keep us with the group and able to stay interested.
Yeah, well, I'm just about to teach again. So I don't know yet because
Are you very shut in, Alice?
Sorry?
Are you very shut in, Alice, or can you go out?
I'm getting most of mine getting delivered.
Yeah. You take care. I'll speak to you soon. Bye. Bye. Bye.
And they sent me a letter, you know, because I'm immune suppressed. I'm immune suppressed. So I'm on medication that suppresses my immune system.
Yeah, I understand.
So
I've got an immune problem, so I can't. I do go out to walk, staying well away from people, but I don't go in any shops or go anywhere. For the same reason. But I think going out in the fresh air is the highlight of the day.
Oh yeah. I mean, I go in the garden, and I did, you know, I always go for walks, you know, but the thing is, it can be quite busy around here.
Yeah.
You know, you've got.
I've got a beach outside the door, so you can spread out, and people do walk well away from each other. So I'm lucky there.
Yeah. My daughter lives near the countryside, so she can. Sorry? What did you say?
Yeah.
My daughter lives near the countryside, and she can go up into the hills, but she got told off yesterday by the farmer. He shouted at her, and she got a panic attack. She had a panic attack. And I think it's because she's under strain, you know, with working at home. And she's such a good girl. That's what it is. She's not used to people shouting at her.
No.
Yeah, unlike you.
No. And I've had to put up with you for 10 years, so I've got a hard grit now.
No, actually, no, you haven't. You've had to put up with me for about 13 years plus about 10 years before that when you tried to have an affair with me. And
no, I was what's that thing you said?
I just haven't denied it.
I did. My daughter just gone to university, and I was had the empty nest syndrome. so I ended up looking after Karl and his children. Well, not exactly looking after them. No, he's always looked after himself. But I used to give you lifts and things, didn't I?
That's true. Thank you very much for that, Anne.
So
So
you've been like always full of ideas, and you know, having started this project and that.
exactly.
You know.
But you never ever went along with me when I tried to invade Poland.
No.
I got to make a phone call to Cardiff Wales Airport to find out if you could hire bombers by the hour.
Oh, I need to go and get. I'm just going to get my charger. Okay.
Come on, hurry up! We got to get started. Hurry up! I tell you what, I can tell Alice has been gassing to Anne. God, maybe they should call her Anne 3.
I thought we looked alike, actually, a little bit. Same ethnicity. Scottish.
I thought you were from Ireland.
I missed that.
No, well, we're actually Scottish Irish.
Yeah, Scottish Irish. Well, I'm more Irish. I've got two Irish
Scottish Irish.
I'm just a mongrel.
Can I ask you something, Bunty? You're definitely into the minimalistic look, aren't you? You've got a radiator and nothing on the wall. There's nothing else in the room.
There is a picture on the wall, but you can't see it well if I move the camera. So if I can show you. There's a picture on the wall. But I do go for fairly minimalist. I like things.
Minimalist is good. So what we're going to do, I do have some articles of the week, if I may share them with you, right? And I've got this guy in Bridgend in Langford Major. He sent me articles of the week. So we can't do articles of the week without showing you this.
Oh.
You know,
Good Abbas.
Yeah, Henry gets very excited with images like this. I do believe Pat came with me down there, and one of the people in the group actually went lying on this, called Kathy, but she's a bit strange. And what they believe quickly is with KARL-JAMES is that they're going to be able to work out what date he's from, because that they reckon he's got the likeness of Hercules. How the hell does anyone know what Hercules looks like anyway? And some people believe that there's a cunning likeness to Oliver Cromwell. and apparently the reason why they showed Oliver Cromwell naked was he was a bit of a prude, right? And they showed him with a club because he used to like battering people apparently in the 1650s. So to try and prove that, what they need to do, they need to dig into one of the chalked out lines, right? And the height is what's the height of this fella? Where does it say? Over 180 foot tall, right? And they say by using thermoluminescence dating, taking samples, is that what you would do? You dig out the chalk all the way down to where the original base was, and then you would record the luminescence that's being given off, because that luminescence given off is the last time that bit actually saw the sun. Yeah. And that will give you a date, and so that's what they're hoping anyway. And just a few other things. Iron Age Britons didn't eat hares and chickens; they idolized them, right? Just one quick thing about that, right? How the hell do they know they idolize them? By just finding their bones. And by the way, the latest craze in America is to actually dress turkeys up in dungarees. This is another one. Evidence of little people. Medieval shrine found near railway in Surrey. A team of railway workers have discovered a small cave believed to be from 1300 on the 15th of August at 12:15. Engineers were fixing a landslip near Guildford in Surrey when they found the suspected medieval shrine. the cave is made up of several sections between 30 and 70 centimeters in height. So when you're thinking about these tiny little things, and it was a shrine, right? And the cave contained what appear to be shrines and decorated niches, evidence of little people.
Yeah, I've been there.
Oh, Christ almighty. Have you?
No.
No. All right then. You said it. Oh God. Anyway, rapid rise of technology software during lockdown offers plenty of solutions, but leaves us vulnerable. Oh, we are all being monitored by the Chinese, and you in particular, Alice, in Scotland. A friend of Nicola Sturgeon, you're in real trouble. Actually, I think that Nicola Sturgeon is quite sexy, to be honest with you, in a weird, distorted way. Anyway, bones found in South Africa show Homo erectus evolved in South Africa and not in the Olduvai Gorge, alongside the little people of Surrey. Or was it Sussex? Right, okay, back to the serious stuff. Back to what I said. You'll get a thing about the registration stuff in the via email, those that are relevant. And I know you joined us a little bit later, and Alice is different. So, and anyone wants to talk about the ghost thing on Saturday at UNE or Wednesday, let me know. But other than that, let's get back to the lecture, right? Now, the problem is, when I've had a break, it usually takes me a while to get into it. So I think the best thing to actually get into it is to actually, oh, hang on a minute. I had something lined up. I'm all in a tismos. Right, okay, now I can hopefully look back there. And that's just what I've got, oh, there, bingo. This will get me into it. Right. You know, I was talking, can you see this? Yeah, good. Del, what can you see on the screen?
Your name.
Your name, yeah.
There we are.
Here a minute as well.
Hidden Egyptian burial chamber.
Right, here we go. This headline news. Friday, February the 21st, 2020 at 12:01. Very precise. Hidden Egyptian burial chamber could be Nefertiti, King Tutankhamun's stepmother. A new radar survey of Tutankhamun's tomb in the Valley of the Kings has revived theories that it could conceal the burial place of ancient Egypt's mysterious queen, Nefertiti. The theory, first proposed by the British archaeologist Nicola Reeves, was rejected 2 years ago after initial survey of the tomb found no signs of the hidden chamber that he thought could be found behind its walls. However, a second fuller survey, whose results have now been revealed by the journal Nature, found indications of a hollow area set a few meters back, parallel to the entrance tunnel. I think that's all we got, actually. That's it. Anyway, that was a nice bit of news. So what we're going to do now, we're going to stop that sharing, and we're going to share again. Do you know what my mum used to say? Share and share alike. Right, so where are we? Oh, here we go. Let's try and get into the mood. So, Del, what can you see?
I can see one of the couches.
And strangely enough, I've got all your mics.
Under the lion bed, yeah. The antechamber.
Under the lion bed. In the antechamber, yes. Now, you're looking at this, and again, I will repeat it. It looks like a bric-and-brac shop from the 1980s. I've been in shops like this. I used to go down to Salisbury with my mum and dad, and I used to see these places all over the place. And it almost looks like that, you know? I'm just going to go and get my diary a minute. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop the screen share a minute. I want to cut some of your mics, not because I can hear you and stuff, simply because if we've got anything going on in the background, then it will fiddle around with things. I need to get something, a little prop. So let's get my little prop. Do you know, in lots of ways, I'm not much different than Tutankhamun because I've got a diary, right? And everything you see in there is basically a page in a diary. You're looking under the lion bed, and the lion bed is close to the wall, which has the entrance into the burial chamber, which you can see one of the sentinel figure's arms there. And what I mean by a diary is that stool in front of us is marked ebony and ivory chair, and it's a chair for a child. And you're looking at that and thinking, why would he keep a chair back from his childhood? And then you're starting to realize that everything from his childhood and his life was kept. This is his life. This is his diary. Whereas I've got a diary with 365 pages and other bits and pieces in, this starts from when he was a child. And it is a diary because his two children are buried with him, mummified. And you look at that, and gently, you look at that box there with this nice little lid, that chest, and it's almost as if it's not there. It's almost as if this cannot be real. And, you know, I said earlier on, look at that image and you can see something poking through. It's a box with a statue in it. It's just poking through there. And do you know what? Any of these bits and pieces would make an archaeologist wonder, would make an archaeologist ask questions, would make an archaeologist want to know more, as you guys do today. So we've got these little ankhs up here, which are very holy symbols of ancient Egypt. But the sadness is that to actually do all these artifacts justice, I'd have to take an image like that, I'd have to open it, and I'd have to show you this slide and all the rest of it. This clearly is an overview today, because none of you are going to be able to read my diary. And I don't think any of you are going to be able to read the diary that is the life of Tutankhamun, because you would need to look at every single artifact, every single little bit of information. And there's a lot of information to take on board there. Now, this is rather interesting. And the reason why this is rather interesting, it takes us from 1922 to 1923. Now, this is a nice little interesting story. To go from the antechamber to be able to go into the treasury, you would have needed to have opened that gap between the antechamber into the treasury, and then you go beyond again into this room. So even before, 2 years before, you could say that the sarcophagus was opened, the final golden sarcophagus that holds his mortal remains was opened. They managed to slip by and sort of move around, and they managed to get into this room. But there's something missing. Anubis is missing, and we'll talk about that in a short while. But there's something rather interesting when you look at this image of the treasury. Not only is Anubis missing because they've already moved him, look at these boxes. That box there, that chest, has a seal on it. That has a seal on it as well. And there's almost looks like this could still have a seal on it somehow as well. I know that looks like a shadow, but there's a seal on it. So you've got these seals on these. But these here, that seal's broken. Now, this is a photograph without Anubis in it, naturally, to get the perspective of the artifacts beyond. That's why Anubis has been moved by the archaeologists. And you're thinking, the question has to be, who's already opened these boxes? And why are these not opened? And I asked that question. Who's already been in there before the archaeologists? Is there evidence of Howard Carter having gone into this room? Is it possible? The answer is we don't really know. But these boxes, again, show you an image of a bric-a-brac shop. Look at all the stuff in there. Can you remember those shops that we used to go into and used to look behind cupboards, and there used to be like a wooden hockey stick in the corner, and there used to be I used to know the shop in Barry used to have a pith helmet in there as well. Really weird things, and this is all just chucked in there. It's all tossed in there. It's almost as if. Let's turn this phone off. Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. Right, that's off. It's almost as if this is very much an afterthought. You know, everything's. You know, they've found the tomb. They've arranged this big sort of golden shrine in the Treasury. They've put this sort of celestial bull in front. Anubis has been carried in there. We sort of look at that image. They've put all these boxes there, and they thought, right, okay, then we'll chuck the other stuff behind. You know, it's just it's a rush job. You know, they almost as if they his Prime Minister wanted to get rid of any reference to Tutankhamun, wanted to get rid of any memorial associated with Tutankhamun. And look at these boxes again. They do look like they've been tampered with. What does that look like to you, Alice and Del? If you're looking down at that for the first time, what's going through your mind?
It's been moved.
Yeah.
What about you, Alice? Go on.
Chaos.
Chaos, and it's been moved, yeah?
Yeah, that item on top that looks like a book or something looks out of place.
It looks like it's come from within the box, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's
There's
what I would say.
There's no dust on it, or, you know, the whatever.
There's something not quite right about these photographs. What do you feel about this, Alice?
Staged.
Oh, how dare you say that?
Yeah.
Staged. Rather interesting. You're using some quite explicit words, defamatory words. In other words, I don't really believe the story of Tutankhamun is the right story. Right? I can't say, for example, right, okay, we're working with an archaeologist, right? Howard Carter, who wanted to do everything right. Yeah. And everything seems to be in place, but things seem to be out of place at the same time. And it could be blamed on grave robbers. But why would a grave robber go in a chest, take a book out? Well, that's not a book, it's like a portfolio book. Put it on top. It's almost as if that box has been opened at an angle and the materials moved. And I'm chucking these things into your minds, and I'm wanting you to think. And I wanted you to think there's things that are not right. That's clearly the seal's clearly been broken there, but the one on this one hasn't. If you're a grave robber, right? I got to be honest with you, right? You're not gonna every reference to grave robbing in Egypt is that they would go into things, smash them open, take what they could. This is somebody who's been in the chest, taken that out, and put it on the top. You know, it's very strange. It's very, very odd. But you know what? I don't want to say any more, because that's what most people do when they examine Tutankhamun's tomb. They go off into a conspiracy theory. And this material itself is fallen on the floor, and that should naturally be on top. It's been moved, or is that from within the case? Again, there's some strange things going on in here. And if you're a grave robber, right? Why haven't you taken the gold off this shrine? It makes no sense. It makes no real sense to what's going on. I think what we'll do is look at these objects. These objects are found in the antechamber. They're carved alabaster vases, away from all the conspiracy talking and so on. And you'll recognize his stool again. his seat. And these are alabaster vases or vases. And alabaster is a very, very soft rock. And they've just been arranged together. Very strange, this. They've been arranged together. They've been sort of piled up. And alabaster is very, very delicate. So if you're carving in this very soft stone and your chisel goes through a little bit, then you've lost the whole thing. You've got to start again. These are very delicate objects, carved alabaster vases. This is an image taken, you know, a few weeks after the tomb's been opened. And obviously there's that gentleness. It's almost as if, on the one hand, they've dumped everything in there, but on the other hand, they've put them in there in an order that they're not going to fall down and break. It's been rushed, but it's not been rushed at the same time. They knew what they were doing. It's an ordered, what's the word? It's an ordered pandemonium. I think that's what that word is. And you know what? One thing I absolutely do love is, again, looking at reconstructed drawings of buildings and structures. I love these things. I used to fall in love with opening the central pages of the National Geographic, and just want to chuck in one thing. They're talking about the other entranceway, the other missing room being alongside the entranceway, which is here, but there's a weird space over here. But let's not say any more, because that takes us off onto another tangent. What this illustration shows us is the clutter. The back room, everything's just been tossed in there. That's been sealed up, and then what we have, there's no illustrations on these walls. These have been whitewashed. There's no illustrations on the ceiling. There's no illustrations on these walls either. We go into the treasury, and I actually, looking back at these earlier on, I actually thought not only are these little boats associated with Tutankhamun that he played with, obviously based on sort of proper Egyptian boats and barges that sailed, rowed or sailed down the River Nile. These things here, these look like pylons associated with the temple at Thebes or Karnak. So I think he had a little, this is one of his own little play sets. It's amazing that. And as I say, the diary sense is that, like, you look at the pages of his childhood. So this is what these are, and the boats. And then you look at there's a cane here. And there's one or two other canes around as well. These are associated with his later years. And you get all these other wonderful, you get the stool, and you get the chest, which he would have used as an adult, if you're following the cursor. So that, you know, that would have had all his items of clothing and so on. And in the back here, it's described that it's got his board games and weird things in there. It's quite you know, this is supposed to be a macho individual. This is supposed to be a pharaoh, but he's being buried with his toys. It's really strange. It's a strange journey. And again, just quickly, look at that there. Look how cramped that is. The sarcophagi inside this large box, and then you've got the other 5 shrines, and then you go to this. These give you the dimensions. The antechamber is only 26 foot in length. The golden shrine, which holds his body, is 21 feet in length. Right? My room is bigger than that. But when you look at Seti I's tomb, it was vast. And just think, even I don't know if I said it, that you could probably fit, you know, this whole tomb network, all these rooms, into a rather small room at Seti I's tomb. In comparison, you know, there's lots of rather interesting things here. And what's happening is they've this was all carved out, And what happened then is that they after they'd placed the shrine in there, they put two masonry pillars, and then eventually, when all this was filled, they sealed them up. And I said that I mentioned about Seti the second earlier on. Seti the second's tomb is sort of hidden away off another valley, off the main Valley of the Kings, and what you find here is something subtle and light. After these sentinels have been taken out of the tomb, they're being sort of conserved and worked on and cleaned. And lots of that dust and debris holds lots of clues, but now it's long since gone. And there's two subtle things are, one, look at the carvings on the wall inside this tomb of Seti II. Not the famous Seti I, but Seti II. Seti II had these wonderful carvings in his tomb. Tutankhamun didn't. And then the other thing as well is, look at the way the conservators are working. They put a little coat hanger in there. They've hung up their coats and their scarf and their hat. It's almost as if this is something that they do every day. It is something that they do every day because they've got thousands of objects to look at. And you could probably, you're looking at that and thinking, well, you could probably get a reconstructed version of that from IKEA. It's like, it's very, it could be very modern if it wanted to. And the reason why I'm saying it looks very modern if it wanted to is because of the explosion of Tutism in the 1920s. You know, you had whole homes in London that were decked out like Tutankhamun's tomb. You know, and these things become commonplace. It's common to see this type of thing. This is why you're not shocked by some of the things I'm showing you. And what is shocking about this image is that a whole year has gone by and they're empty in the antechamber. Most of it's gone. And what is quite shocking is Howard Carter is there with Arthur Callender and an Egyptian worker whose name we will never know, sadly. And look at the golden shrine behind. It's almost as if, look, it's only a golden shrine. It's just behind us. We just need to do this. And if I'd been critical of Howard Carter, maybe I regret that criticism, because and maybe I regret those conspiracy theories, but in lots of ways, Howard Carter being in there before the official opening takes us on another direction, and there's nothing wrong with that. But he's doing this, and it's almost as if he's not really bothered with the shrine behind him. He's just being an archaeologist. He's not interested in the gold or glory. He's just interested in doing the work there. This is what this image shows me and tells me. Very, and you're looking in this, and it's a snapshot of a strange world. Very strange. And what is strange is the we had a number of chariots being found, and this chariot itself is being conserved by Arthur Mace on the left and Alfred Lucas on the right, and it looks like that is Howard Carter in the distance. And they're conserving this at Seti II's tomb, Sethos II's tomb, and it's quite, you know, we're archaeologists, we're conservators, and they're conserving it on some Egyptian Herald newspapers of the day. And I think that's a rather strange point. I just checked this in there. Obviously, what the tomb is not very deep in the ground. There's the surface there. And lots of tombs in Egypt are really deep in the ground. But this isn't. Again, it's an afterthought. You know, A was never never going to be a pharaoh really, but he was. But this was like a second-rate tomb for him. Happened to be in the Valley of the Kings because he was a politician and a leader. Obviously, it doesn't have the grandiose nature that would be fitting of a pharaoh. And the point I was trying to make earlier on, there's Anubis, 1923, and we've got Anubis there. And what's rather interesting about this is, forget everything else in the room, forget it all, right? The pallbearer's poles are still connected to it. It's almost as if somebody's turned around and said, look, people, we're in a bit of a rush. Just leave the poles there because we've now got to seal up the burial chamber. Come on, move on. Come on, get out of there. And it's strange me saying that because the shrines would have been built after Anubis had been placed in there. And maybe what I'm saying is that they put the shrines up and somebody said, well, you know, the pallbearers have left the poles in there, and they're saying, well, just forget about it. You know, we've got to go. Somebody's saying, why haven't we painted the walls? It's too late. We've got all the stuff in here. No, it's fine. We've got to go. We've got to leave this place. Lots of strange things. Lots of strange, unusual secrets. And you don't hear about all this. Anubis, and this is interesting, this wonderful Anubis is actually the god of death and cemeteries, and he roams the cemeteries at night. He's the god who you've got to, he's the ferryman of the ancient Egyptian world. He's the one that you've got to be very careful around, the one you've got to respect. And he's looking at the tomb of Tutankhamun, watching over the tomb of Tutankhamun. And he's got a bit of a blanket over him as well. Great. And those little caskets that I mentioned earlier on, you can see them down there. They still look the same as they did in early images. So again, there's things that are not right. And look at all the bric-a-brac in the background as well. So what we're talking about is, it's very likely that a lot of activity is occurring in December 1923, because this is dated 1923. This must be late 1923, because to have managed to get into the burial chamber and to manage to get into the treasury, you have to be able to break through into you've got to be able to break into the burial chamber first. So a lot's going on in that December. Why, I don't know. That little bit seems to have been rushed, and then they take another whole year plus before they actually start to open the sarcophagi of Tutankhamun himself. It's almost as if bits are rushed, bits go slowly, something not quite right going on here. And this is a rush job. They're taking this down to get the shrines out. He's using a crowbar. And again, the caption's a bit strange. Carter, Calendine, and 2 workers remove the partition wall. I can actually see 3. So in the December, just before Anubis is removed after that, in the same December 1923, when we've got a bit of a rush on to move these shrines and stuff, and we've got 5 layers of shrines, this says the inside of the outermost shrine in the burial chamber, you can see that the shrines themselves almost reach the ceiling, and you can't really see the paintings in there. You can't see the artwork in there. But the painting on the wall has already started to decay. The paintings on the wall have started to decay after a very short period of time, or something had happened before the official opening. This sort of golden pall or golden pail has got these sort of golden sort of bosses on them to sort of represent the night sky and sort of the stars, and it's and look at the ceiling as well. It's not been finished. It's still a bit rough. Still rough. And again, this perspective. Look at the burial chamber. It almost takes up. If you're going to be able to get into the treasury, you've got to sort of you've got to squeeze past these shrines, and it's really cluttered. It's all really cluttered. And as they're going into the burial chamber, they're moving in this linen pall, which covered the second shrine. And again, this is December the 30th, 1923. So there's a lot of activity going in a very short period of time. It seems to be really rushed. And maybe the date of that earlier image about Anubis might be slightly wrong, or maybe they've done a lot on these 2 days. I don't know. Story's not really clear. So we've got 2 more images left after this, and I'm very wary of time. So what they're doing, after they've moved that partition, what they've done, they've started to dismantle the shrines and the golden shrine within the burial chamber. So all these are being dismantled to be taken out and taken to the Cairo Museum, never to go back again. And this next one's quite, not this one. Loads of people like to do reconstructions of these things. Now look at that there. Notice the dates. 1923, they're dismantling the shrines. December 1923. 1924 is gone. 1925, over 18 months later, we're down to looking now into the sarcophaguses, the 3 of them, October 1925. And this is Howard Carter. And this linen covering over here, by the time we look at the next image, is very badly decayed, or it's been removed. And Carter and a worker examining the solid gold innermost sarcophagus. Folks, as soon as that's lifted up, you will be looking into the eyes and the face of Tutankhamun himself. And I think it's, somebody said to me on Tuesday evening when I was doing this, they said, it's very sad. I feel very sad with what happened to Tutankhamun's body and Tutankhamun's tomb. In a way, I feel the same, but I've got to look at it scientifically. As soon as the tomb's been opened, Howard Carter now has to work on this before things start to decay and fall apart. So there you are. There you go. There's me defending him. And what I would like to do, I don't know what these images are up here, so if I can get rid of that a minute. And there is an image I would like to show you. So we've stopped that. That's okay. I'd like to, there was one last image I wanted to show you, so I'm just going to try and find it. And I didn't find it earlier on, and I refound it. Hang on a minute. Give me a moment, and we'll look at this last image. Right, okay, here we go. Why have you disappeared again? Hang on, bear with me. Right, okay. There it is. Nice, that's what I wanted. And if we go to the screen sharing again, we should have it. Oh, okay, good. Let's screen share and gently put this up there. Excellent, good. And now you're looking into the face of Tutankhamun himself. It's quite sad, to be honest. After all the wrappings have been removed, you're looking into the mummified face of this pharaoh. I'm not really sure the reconstruction on the left is is as good as it could be. And we know he had buck teeth as well. We know he had problems with his teeth. But that is what Howard Carter eventually came to see. And after seeing the face of Tutankhamun, I believe that Howard Carter probably felt fulfilled. This wasn't about the gold. It was never about the gold with Howard Carter. It was about finding this lost pharaoh. And by eventually, after 3 long, very hard years of emptying the tomb, recording everything, and he had a few more years to go before everything would be emptied and everything would be recorded. This is what he came to see. So what I'd like to do is ask if there's any questions, and then we'll call it a day. I'll put you all on. What I'm gonna do, if you can all look at that face a minute, and I'll be back in a second. If you could bear with me, hang on. Sorry about that. So you've looked into the face of King Tutankhamun, and if we can go off the screen share. Right, okay. Let's put all your mics on. Unmute. Let's have the Anns. Okay, and let's have the Alice's. Henri, there we go. Right, okay. Right, carry on, folks.
I was only going to say that, you know, it's wonderful. The coloured photographs were wonderful, but I think they're digitally enhanced. So
they're actually not. They're from a publication which was published quite some time ago, before digitally enhancing. Yes, that's right. They're not digital.
They almost look like somebody's got hold of the actual objects and actually photographed them, you know, like in like in another situation.
I can't say, I can't comment because I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, they don't look like the same, like the black and white photos. They look, you know, authentic.
Genuine. Yeah.
But the others, they look sort of like someone said, like stage set, really, you know. But maybe that's just the way they did it, you know.
Yeah, that's
where
true.
they tinted the photographs or something, you know.
What about you, Del? Yeah, Karen.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah. It's put a different angle on it. The sort of the human side of him. That was good. I mean, the reconstruction, I don't think that's how he would have looked personally, because looking at the structure of the lower jaw,
it was
it's
a bit
different.
Yeah,
it's different.
Yeah, it was more. Basically the bone,
like a longer.
Look right.
Yeah.
There's not much, you know. There's not much, you know. But it looks different. What about you, Alice?
Well, I just thought the face wasn't the true. No,
I agree.
No, the bone structure. It's just not the bottom jawline. It's just not. Doesn't appear right. No.
Yeah, I agree. I
No.
agree.
Mm.
I agree. I agree. Right. What about you, Henry, Pat?
I think they've all gone
No,
home.
Oh, they
still
haven't.
here.
No, I'm here. I enjoyed it.
And you, Henry?
Yes, very good. It kind of obviously something was going on in the background as regards how this whole process was being done at the time,
Yeah.
and it smacks of though the tomb had been tidied up and things put to one side before supposedly it was opened, which looked a bit strange.
Yeah, particularly that one clue is that sort of box with the portfolio type thing on top. It just doesn't. It doesn't look right. And you know, if you're a grave robber, right? Grave robbers are greedy by nature, right? And you don't sort of take things out and say, "Oh, I don't like this," and put it on the top of the
Put
box.
it back.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, sort of, it's almost as if, I got a lid of a box, right? There's a bit of linen on top, right? What we'll do, oh, that's okay. Not really interested in that. And then in the other box, what we'll do, all right, okay, hang on. Close the box down. We'll leave that on the top. Forget about those 3 boxes. We won't open them.
Yeah, someone had a good shifty around and then restacked everything.
Who's doing that? This is the big question.
Oof.
Ooh, exactly. I want to. Okay, the thing is, as you present lectures like this, you see that there's something not quite right, and this has been building, right? So if you want to look at it one way, on one side you got Howard Carter. I believe that he found the tomb before he opened it, and he went in there and he saw, oh, that's nice, really nice, and he left it, right? The actions of an archaeologist are not to go in places and sort of lift up things and whatever, and then, by the way, then reorganize everything. That's not what an archaeologist would do. So therefore, you've got another element that I don't really understand, and it's definitely not grave robbers.
No.
And the other thing is, the thing that one of you noticed was on that portfolio, there was no dust stuff on it.
Yeah, there was nothing.
No.
And it looked like a modern thing, something from the 20s. It looked as though it was Howard Carter or whoever's, you know, what he was taking in and just happened to leave there.
Well, that really messes things up, doesn't it? Right, okay. So, right, if there's no more questions, I'd like to thank you for all doing this today, and I'm going to let you know what we're doing next week.
I know who you can blame.
Who?
The Heritage Department.
Oh, we're not blaming anyone. We'll blame you. Next week, we're going to do more on the Romans. Oh, I forgot. We're not doing the Romans next week. We're doing Pete Marsh, the Bog Body.
Ooh.
Oh, interesting.
Peter the Marsh, and then the following week we will be looking at a King of Glamorgan.
King of Glamorgan. I'm wondering whether to change the classes and go to your Welsh one. I can't afford 2.
And then we start the new series of lectures, which are on the archaeology of events. And the first one will be the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest.
Ooh.
And that one, we start those new series of doodahs on the 18th of May. So, are there any, if there's nothing else, anyone else want to say one last thing? Go on, anything? No? Okay.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And you've all enjoyed today?
Yeah, excellent.
Yes.
And thank you. Thank you. Good. If anyone wants a quick chat in the other room.
Okay. Bye all.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say goodbye to
Dale.
everybody. I will see you either on Saturday or Wednesday or Thursday. I will see you then. Take care, guys.
Bye.
See you, Dale. Dale's gone. See you, Pat.
Bye.
And Henri and Alice and Anne. Anyone who wants to chat, I'll be here for a minute. So.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Lift Anne up there. She's really quiet. See you, Henri. Bye.
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 Who's left? Alice, are you off? Okay, Alice is still there. Pat, okay, Alice is gone.
Goodbye.
See you, Pat.
Bye. Bye, Pat.
Bye.
Bye-bye, Pat.
Good to see you.
And you. I saw your name anyway. No, Carl, wait, don't delete me.
Go on.
I was going to say, which one would be better for me to do? The Welsh one or today?
Well, the Welsh one is very, very different. I got a very different attitude on that one.
Is it more serious or less serious?
Yeah, this was sort of being serious, but it's there's been a bit of humor and stuff in it as well. That one is completely deadpan.
Is
So,
it?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's straight down to the undies and out the other end on that one.
yeah. Because I, you know, I'm looking at like I don't know a lot about Welsh history, except what you've taught me. So I don't know whether.
I tell you what, we'll have a chat about it on Monday, okay?
All right, ta then.
Anyway, I'll speak to you soon.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Anne. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
How do I do it now?
If I end the meeting, then it's done.